So if you haven't heard the news cycles this weekend, we're clogged with King Charles coronation footage. And I want to give you a couple of words on this. And there's a scale to which you can digest the information that if you do your research, that you will come to a conclusion yourself. But I've been saying for a very long time, like with anything, there are things that you take at face value, and there are deeper levels that as you escalate and as you progress in your journey of awakening and finding out the truth, that you will see that not all is what it seems. And so I want to touch on sort of the middle ground, because some of the extreme stuff, right, for many people, even watching this channel, it's going to be a little bit much. Now, you can take it as you will with a grain of salt. But when I looked at King Charles, I thought immediately of Princess Diana. And if you were living through that time, you know that the tragic death of her through this car crash and all the things that had come out of that were pretty tragic. And now if you do any amount of digging at all, you know, or you would assume that it was not what it seemed, right? And so, meaning that you can go from anything of her testimony of what she has purportedly said to other people, of she knows things and they had to silence her. So again, there's a scale. You can see it as some kind of quote unquote conspiracy in terms of she knew too much. There was things that she was going to expose, even as far as saying that King Charles and this royal family were possessed by the demon, by Satan himself, calling it a serpent-like lizard people. And so you can take that how you want, but we know that in the Bible that Satan comes as a slithering snake, as a lizard-like creature. And so however you want to take that, you can do that. But if you do any amount of research, you would see that there was more stuff there, evil things happening. This Buckingham Palace, all of these royal places doing things that were wicked to anyone's imagination. And so you can do your research there, but that's more on the extreme end in terms of the digestibility of this kind of information. And so what I'm saying here is that as you're looking at this, of course, Jesus Christ is the only king that you would ever swear your allegiance to, so to speak. But with King Charles and just this whole monarch and just royal family, I want to take it back to what has been just this, if you want to say, evidence-based research. And again, they tell you things in school. They tell you, what the United States and the freedom that it has been is, but there are more things than meets the eye. And even for me, this journey has been incredibly eye-opening. I've been learning about things that had happened, supposedly, before 1812 and the War of 1812. And I'm about to show you guys a clip here in a second, but it even touches on all these buildings and this whole reset in some sense. When you talk about orphanages and talk about just all this mass migration, all these things that were burned down, Tartaria, right? And all of this things that had happened prior to this 1812 era, and what really happened in terms of resetting history, right? There are some CIA documents that were leaked talking about the concerted effort to censor the real history. And so all the stuff that's happened up to 1871, this new corporation versus this the actual republic and the actual constitution that we have and what it means. And if you do any legal analysis, you would know that what we have in terms of common law versus maritime law, all these things are there. And so I want to give you guys this quick clip. This comes from a documentary called Ring of Power. You can see its full 5-hour thing if you would like. But I was reminded of this because it's very eye-opening, right, in terms of what it's outlining. And all of this stuff isn't just on this one documentary. Everybody is trying to piece together these things, everything from Illuminati, the 3 cities, right, and all this stuff that supposedly goes on where we are indebted to the central banking system, the Federal Reserve System, and just all these rich small families. I've been talking about that for a while. But are we really free, especially from the royal King Charles, this monarch that we have? Or is there something else going on? Because in the public realm, they're going to say things like, oh, hey, we're just this harmless city of London, this royal family here, nothing is going on. But behind the scenes, is there more things? And so if you have never heard about these things, then it may be eye-opening to you. Pray through it, ask about it. But in the midst of this great awakening of understanding who really controls and what really is going on in the world in terms of legal structure, in terms of just country structure, what really happened with history, these things are coming out more and more. And so most people, they're not going to be ready for it because you've been taught things in school to view things in a certain way. but you have to realize that there's more than meets the eye. So this process of this great awakening and people relearning history, relearning and understanding what's going on behind the scenes. I'm telling you, these things will come out and you have to be ready to digest it. You can't just brush it off. And so I'm going to show you this quick clip talking about some of these things.
A third city-state was officially created in 1982. That city-state is called the District of Columbia and is located on 10 square miles of land in the heart of Washington. The District of Columbia flies its own flag and has its own independent constitution. Although geographically separate, the city-states of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called Empire of the City. The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the First Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed or Federal Reserve is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words "In God We Trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the President is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the President is President of the Corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C. city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the Freemason Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. The secretive Brotherhood of Freemasons laid the Washington obelisk's cornerstone in 1848 and contributed 22 Masonic memorial stones. 250 Masonic lodges financed the Washington Monument obelisk, including the Knights Templar Masonic Order. At the heart of London city-state is a 187-ton, 69-foot-tall Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle. It was transported from Egypt and erected on the banks of the River Thames. In Vatican City, another Egyptian obelisk towers high above St. Peter's Square.
So again, there's a scale. If you haven't been exposed to these things, you're going to write it off as, oh, that's unbelievable, that's crazy. But the more you slide up the scale and actually do research and pray through it, you would realize, man, there's more than what I've been taught. There's more than meets the eye. There's more that's there. And this is factual because this is evidence-based. It's just that you have to actually research it. Just like how you would research Q, you would research these things. In terms of the other more extreme stuff, manifestation of Satan himself, demons themselves, this lizard creature, this alien stuff, whatever you want to call it, those might be more on the extreme end, the bleeding edge of reality, of the truth. But for other things, you can do some research, take some time and realize, okay, I understand case law. I understand the Constitution. I understand what is basically history. And then you do any more digging, you connect the dots, you would realize something else happened before 1812. They're telling you certain things, but there's more there. And so again, this is a process. I'm only sharing to you what is true, except that you have to do your research yourself. And I say all this because there's more here that will come out with this queen that passed away, right? And then King Charles being crowned and many other things. And we will see these things come to light. And more importantly, the freedom that we need and we deserve as a people, as a country, as society, in terms of what we've been ruling under, not in a political, right, aspect, but a lot of it through the financial system. And so, of course, with the 3 cities, you can see the military-industrial complex, the religious aspect, and the financial. But this area, watch for it. Watch for some of these things to come out. And so not everything is what it seems. There's a lot of show going on, a lot of movie playing, a lot of acting going on. But we'll see. We'll see what comes out of it. So again, this is a video just to tell you that not everything is what it seems. You see it on TV. We're all clapping like seals, like, oh, King Charles, King Charles. We know who the true God is, who the true king is. But in the midst of all that, let's open our eyes to understand what really is the reality, your perception of reality, of society, of earth, of everything today. So love you guys. More to come. God bless you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.